From the city of brotherly love, this is Bite Biz with David Strausser.
Welcome to Bite Biz Live. This is our very first and extremely special live stream show of the event. I'm not alone, though. I got a co-host and previous guest from the Bite Biz show here with me today. Who's my co-host? You're probably wondering. Well, it's Odeta Pied. Here she is. Odeta, say hi.
Hi, David. Hi. Thank you for having me today. This is our second show together, except that I'm the co-host today. So I'm super excited.
Second show together, but first live stream.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you what, I am thrilled to have you join the show with me. So there might be one or two people out there that did not see your episode on Bite Biz. So do us a favor real quick. Why don't you tell, for all those people out there wondering, who the heck is Odeta? Tell us who you are real quick.
Yes, so I am the founder and the CEO of G7 Tech Services, which is a professional services and software company out of New Braunfels, Texas, actually. And we specialize and help companies growth, and we love what we call data and make the best decisions for, the best business growth.
Wow, that's amazing. Everybody loves data. It's really, these days, when you get into the roaring 20s, I mean, that is what helps businesses not only survive, but thrive in these days. And being able to get that raw data to turn into beautiful business intelligence is really critical for growth. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, 100%, David, right there with you.
So, okay, well, great stuff. Amazing stuff with data. Like I was saying earlier, we do have an amazing show set up for us all tonight. This show is not going to be a traditional Bite Biz episode, unlike the podcast. You got to remember, the podcast is set up where I bring you the best experts in a field, and we just have a structured but unstructured kind of see where it goes conversation. This live stream is different. This is going to be talking about the business and tech news of the day. Today, we have some amazing topics out there. We're going to be covering things like the recession, inflation, all the drama between Elon Musk and Twitter. And we have a very special interview lined up within this live stream broadcast with Scott Jennings, the Chief Revenue Officer at Centage Corp. First, though, I've got to do some housekeeping. Let's give a special thanks, a special shout out to both of our main sponsors for tonight's episode, Vision 33 and also G7 Tech Services. Would not be possible without the help, love, and support of both of those companies. Please go check them out. Basically, both companies have made this possible, but we also can't forget Bite Biz's own coffee brand, deadhousecoffee.com. Coffee that is roasted, sealed, and shipped to your doorstep within a 24-hour period. And we have a special promo for tonight, okay? Use code 25 now. That's 25 now. And you're going to get 25% off your fresh coffee order. And it's going to help us keep doing all this amazing rocking stuff that we're doing, like this live stream tonight. So again, thank you, Vision 33, G7 Tech Services, deadhousecoffee.com. Very, very grateful that we're able to do this. And one last item of note, super chats. If you're watching us on YouTube, at the end of this show, you'll have Odeta, you'll have myself, and you'll have Scott Jennings all out there answering your questions, your comments, your concerns, or complaints. If you want to complain, go ahead, do a super chat, complain about us. I'd love to hear it. We're here live. We're going to rock it out. So with that in mind, let's get down to today's first topic. Odeta, I got to ask you,
Hi.
What do you have on your plate?
Well, we'll start with the most talked topic, which is the recession, right? We see lots of news out there lots of comments, lots of thoughts, opinions, and all of that. So I want to, given that I'm a data-driven company, I like to go through the facts, right? But before I get into the meat of it, I want to kind of teach and educate a little bit about the recession, the audience, right? So when we talk about recession, what do we talk about, right? And I'm going to share my screen here so that I can show you some of this data and analytics. I'm hoping you guys can see my screen here. So one of the articles I wanted to bring up, right, about recession, what is it, right? Based on the National Bureau of Economic Research, recession is a period between a peak of economic activity and its subsequent troughs, right, or lowest point. And anything between the trough or the peak, we call it an expansion. So the expansion is the normal state of the economy, and that's where we should be, right? And then most of these recessions are brief. So what's happening today, right? We're in the 21st century, and we have seen quite a few recessions, right? We saw the dot-com bust from 2000 to 2001, which lasted about a year or so. Then we saw the big housing market, right, in 2008. And then we saw the most recent one in 2020, which we all know about, which was the pandemic or the COVID recession, which was one of the shortest recessions dated for the 21st century. And now we're kind of seeing another recession, right? And everyone is so afraid of what's going to happen. So the question is, are we currently in a real recession or no? And if so, how bad will it get, right? And what should we expect in the next few months, in the next year, a couple of years to come, right? Well, if we look and do a deep dive at the data, right, and this is from the, Bureau Economic website, and, the way a recession is defined is, having negative, one of the metrics that I look at is having a negative GDP number, right? So, and when we're talking about GDP, we're talking about the real gross domestic product, right? So if we look here at this chart, right, from 2018 all the way to Q1 2022, Q2 is coming up, and then there's an estimate about, the Q3 in 2022. So if we look at this, you will see here that we had a big dip, obviously during the pandemic here, right? It was a negative growth. And then kind of the economy came up, we kind of ran into this demand supply chain issues, right? And now in Q1, close Q1, we saw a decrease of 1.6, right? And they're expecting to have a Q2 decrease of 2.1% as well as a Q3 decrease, right? But the question is this enough, right? To look and then kind of say that, hey, we are in a real recession? Well, if you look at the other measures, right, and we're talking here about the personal income, right? So if you look at the personal income, if we looked at the disposable income, if we look at the sales or the revenue numbers, the company, if you look at the industrial production, all of these have gone up, right? So are we in a real recession or are we in a technical run, right? According to all of the metrics that we've seen, GDP with a negative growth, but also positive growth on personal income, corporate profits, and so on and so forth, I'd say that we're not in a real recession yet. But anything can change and anything will change drastically. And I truly do believe that we will not see a recession, a big one, this year, but definitely in 2023 and 2024 for sure. So that's kind of, a little bit of this numbers that we're looking at, right? And, the Federal Reserve is a big conversation right now, right? What are they going to do about this? And, as Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve chairman, mentioned in June, he said, we should be able to control this, right? And how will we control this? It's by, increasing this interest rate, which we have seen a huge increase in the interest rate, right? And also, which this kind of brings us to the next step here, or topic, is the inflation, right? So there's got to be some price stability and control so that we don't see quite a big dip recession, coming up for the U.S. So, David, what do you think about all these issues?
So I think there's a, very interesting case that you kind of laid out there with the recession. And the first thing, I was actually writing notes there when you were saying, David, what do you think about this? Because you triggered something in my mind. And for people that know Shark Bite Biz that have watched many of our episodes. We just had I believe it was last season, we had Evan Sohn. He is the CEO of Recruiter.com. He's also a CNBC analyst, and he ends up going on there every month when they do the jobs report. You know what I'm talking about? He comes on and he gives those job numbers. What's interesting to me is that Recruiter.com kind of defines himself as a data company. They're scouring, the whole internet, finding out information, and they're bringing all this data into one place and basically using AI and BI and all those fancy acronyms to pull out some reasoning. And he was telling us on the show the Great Resignation, which I think ties into this. The Great Resignation will end by all his economic indicators by fall. Now, you've got to remember, this episode came out a couple months ago. And
Right.
I think he was kind of spot on because that Great Resignation, it seems like it's kind of lining up nicely with, for lack of a
what's
better
happening
term,
right now,
with
right?
a potential recession, no?
Yes, I mean, absolutely, 100% agreed right there.
I mean, I think you also did bring up a lot of good points about the recession. I do think it's hard. You look at the line of work that we do, okay? I don't know if you've seen this yet, but you probably have. When hard times come, budgets for tech and new systems and stuff like that is usually one of the first that kind of get squashed or minimized. They get canned right away. It's the customers are coming, I guess, more conservative with cash flow and what they're spending money on. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that customers aren't spending money. Customers being that we both work in the B2B sector, businesses are still spending money, but they're doing it as far as, I guess you could say, you piecemealing it. Like they're doing a little bit at a time instead of buying the whole pie and doing it all. Now they're doing, let's do a phased approach. Or, you know what? Do I really need 50 users now? We can probably only use 10 or 15 users for implementation. And then closer to go live, we're going to go add the other 35 or 40 users. And I think we're seeing a lot more of that just because a lot of businesses don't know what to expect. Have you seen that at all during, with your business yet?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And I think, our business is it's a services company, right, and software company, and most of these deals go through online nowadays, right? You don't see people, and that makes it a little bit difficult. And also, the recession, right? Because we're talking about that. We've seen a lot of companies, even some of the big ones out there, where, like you said, they kind of restrict themselves. They want to test it out. They do a trial run, right? How is this going to run, right? Let's get a couple of users, which is the business users, the main business users, proof of concept, and the pilot, right? The proof of concept kind of dives into that pilot that they can use for a certain amount of time. And then you either get the green light to go ahead and, get it done because it does work. The pilot is working great, or you just get the red light and it shuts down. So, speaking about this recession, how it has affected also, my business, or kind of the same businesses in tech, is that people are becoming more stingy, right? In a way that they're saving their money and they're making more thoughtful decisions rather than just kind of writing a check. Which what this means is that it's taking longer to close the deals. So this is
It is.
longer sales cycles, and also
Because
more resources.
the proof of concept is almost extending the sales cycle because you're implementing services, you're doing a project or whatever, but because you're in proof of concept mode, it's basically a paid sales engagement, and they're really holding a
Exactly.
stick and a carrot in front of you, and you have to perform every step of the way, and then also cross your fingers that the economy goes the way that you're looking for.
Exactly. And one of the metrics that I mentioned earlier was the sales increase, right?
Mhm.
Yes, we have a positive sales increase, right? But when you look at all of this, right? Yes, I did sign the deal, but it took me 6 to 12 months to sign the deal, or 6 to 18 months to
Mhm.
sign the deal. So if you kind of spread that out, it's kind of, hey, yes, it's going up, but it's taking longer and also more resources. So you kind of got that balancing effect here between, revenue and sales you're making versus the cost that it's taking you to do that and the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. And I think I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here with my viewpoints on the recession itself. And I don't know how you'll feel about this, but this is what I think, and I'd love your feedback on it as well too. But I really view this recession that's coming. It seems like most of the experts are saying right now that it is coming. It was trending on Twitter earlier today, for example. I view this as a manufactured recession. And if you didn't see, I put manufactured in quotes. And the reason that I put it in quotes is because, come on, look, if you close down the world's economy, okay, how is supply supposed to keep up with demand? Okay, there's a lot of people that want to go out and buy things, whether it's cars, but the cars don't have the features, or they don't have the chips to make touchscreens inside the car. So, like with us, we didn't buy a car now. We ended up just buying our leased vehicle because our 2019 leased vehicle, when the lease ended, was still better than what we were able to find out there in the market. And I think
Exactly.
that the demand is there, but I mean, all those experts out there that work for our wonderful, wonderful government. I mean, this should have been predictable because, again, if you close everything down during the pandemic, all those manufacturing centers, not just in the United States, I mean, we're talking China, Asia, Europe,
This is a
Africa,
global. This is a global. Yeah.
global. It's a global thing. Now, if it was centered like, okay, just the United States is shutting down, just China is shutting down, or just this country or that country, would we feel it globally? Yeah, but it would be probably more of a speed bump than a potential full-blown recession.
Recession.
And I think that's where I kind of lie, okay? I I don't know if once supply catches up to demand, will we be fully out of the recession? Is it going to end? Or if it takes a long time for supply to catch up with demand, are we going to go into full blown recession? And that's essentially what I really fear.
Yes. My thoughts on all of this is we are not in a real recession, right? We're in a technical one, like you said, or manufactured one, right? Will we hit one? Yes. Will it be really bad? I don't think so. Is there a lot of unknown? Absolutely. Because you have to think outside of just the US, right, David?
Hmm.
This is a global issue. And there's a lot of topics out there and issues that are unresolved, right? That are not happening in the US. They're happening outside. And if you think about the goods, right, we're talking about
Right.
globally. This is a whole
Hmm.
market globally. It's not just the US. So yes, I
That's
definitely
one of
think we will
the
see a
bad things
recession.
about globalization, I think. Sorry. I think that's one of the bad
Right.
things about the globalization is because the world is, and I'm not against globalization. Don't take it to that extreme. What I'm just
Right.
saying is because we're so dependent upon other countries for other things, and a lot of countries are dependent upon us for certain things, that once that's removed, I mean, you run into major issues.
That's I agree. I agree there with you, David, 100%.
So yeah, that's great. What do you think? You think
So,
you're ready to move on to
David,
the next topic?
yes. No, I think I want to, because I'm sure a lot of people are wondering here. We talked about the data, we talked about GDP, we talked about personal income, disposable, all of this, right? What are some of the 4 tips that, people should kind of think about during this hard times, right, or expected hard times to come? What are your thoughts on that, David? And then we'll chip in and we'll make this a conversation.
So yeah, definitely. So I have my own personal tips. I know you have some tips as well too. I mean, I'm kind of the person where if you can afford it, as far as the market stuff like that, when it's low, it eventually will bounce back up. So I think it's a good time. And remember, I'm not a financial advisor, so I've got to get that
Neither am I.
disclosure out there. But as far as crypto, as far as stock market, I mean, I do think the future is it will eventually rebound. How long is it? Have we seen the bottom yet? I don't know. I think that is really the piece to be determined. But I mean, I think it comes back to kind of like what we were talking about earlier. If you look in the B2B market, that people are being conservative as far as their purchases, their expenses, their headcounts. I mean, in May, I believe it was, we can, you should easily be able to fact check this, but in May, it was the biggest layoffs that the tech industry has ever had. They have more rescinded offers than ever before. And it's because they're being conservative, not knowing exactly. I mean, it's almost like when we first got into COVID, nobody knew what was going to go. Like, well, they were like, okay, flatten the curve 2 weeks. You do that. Then after that, it's still like, it's still murky out here. And that's really where businesses ended up getting conservative. And I think that there's a model there that people can follow. Okay, there's a model that people can follow that, okay, this is kind of what businesses are doing. And you should look at your home, almost like a business, P&L, the profit and loss, your budget, all those types of things, and manage it as stuff. And I feel that probably, being more conservative with your purchases, with your expenses, how you live your life now, and probably building a nest egg if you can, or make the necessary cutbacks, because again, we don't know if this is the bottom or if it's going to get much worse than here. So that's my biggest piece of advice. And if you have the luxury of having extra cash, I'd probably be investing it. I don't have that luxury, so we're on conserve mode. But what about you? I know that you had a really good bullet point list of a lot of ideas. Odeta, I think your mic has cut out. Yeah. I am not here. Yes, Francisco is our producer. He has said that definitely your mic has cut out. But if you want, I'll cover your bullet point list.
I'm right here.
Oh, there you are. You're back. See, hey, live show production. First off, hey, before you get into your bullet point list, Data, I've got to announce right now, we're up to 337 live viewers watching Shark Bite Biz's first ever live stream. So that is amazing. And I'll announce right now, remember, get those super chats out there on YouTube. At the end of the show, Odeta, myself, and our very special guest, Scott Jennings, will be reading all of the super chats. So let's get back to Odeta. Tell us your list that you were about to say.
Yes, right about when I cut off somehow. I don't know why, but sorry about that, guys. You were talking about cash reserves, right? Which is one of my favorite topics. Not only just around this time, but also, for businesses, the whole cash flow projection, right? And you mentioned layoffs as well. So when you talk about the layoffs, it's interesting because during COVID, when there were a lot of layoffs, people struggled, right? And one of the main reasons why they did was because they didn't have the cash available right away. So one of my tips that I want to, tell people out there is make sure your cash reserves are somehow there to be able to support yourself at least 2 to 4 months, depending on what all of your, bills are, expenses, and all of that stuff. Cash is king. as we say in Albania.
Cash
And
is
gold.
king. I love
Yes.
that.
So, I think that is a really good tip from my side. The other thing too is your budget evaluations, right? Try to get rid of your not your non-essentials, right? All of the extra subscriptions that we sign up and we'll forget about it, and then it just kind of adds up on top of what you have. And I'm sure everyone has a lot of non-essentials there. So kind of do an audit of that, and and then kind of see where you guys are with that, right? And another tip that I also have which is very important, is be innovative, right? At G7, we're all about innovation, and be innovative with your sources of income. Diversify your sources of income, which means get some extra jobs, right? Now we all work remote. And it is so easy to put yourself out there and diversify this, source of income. And also, one of the most important things as well is consume the news very careful. And I always tell people, put your oxygen mask on, because a lot of this news that you watch every day, it's lots of panicking, some brainwashing, and just kind of pick and choose the right news to look at and the right people to be surrounded with, right? That make
Are you trying to say that you cannot trust mainstream media? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, David, right. You just think you can't keep digging in there.
Yeah. I just bluntly say it, but no, I think your points are absolutely valid. And I go through what I call droughts, where I purposely ignore media, and I won't go out. I just won't watch news or tech news. I will, but outside of that, I don't listen or watch anything. I might do it for a week or two. Why? Because negative news gets to clicks, it gets to headlines, and it's like, why do you need all that negativity all the time? Take a step back and just kind of think for yourself.
Absolutely, 100%. Use your own mind to make the right decisions.
Yep.
Awesome.
So, as far as our next topic, are we ready to jump into that?
Absolutely. One of my other favorites, too, as a matter of fact.
Oh, yeah. This is a fun topic here. So as we like doing, what we're going to do is just kind of lay down some statistics here to get my mouse cooperate with me. But I brought this up. Inflation surges to 9.1% in June, which is, they expected a decline 8.8, but it went all the way up to 9.1%, which is huge. And I think that's a part of inflation and the economy, kind of, or the recession, kind of go together, but not necessarily. And I'll get into that in a minute. But inflation is even crushing rural America, where you would think traditionally, oh, well, if you're not in New York City, it's going to be cheaper in the rural areas. Not true. I mean, here's a wonderful article from NPR that's talking about how the, rural America is actually suffering and having to end up, going to the cities as far as high-paid jobs, or even just to do some purchases for items, because they're not able to get it where they're at. It's not making it out there. And excuse the ads. We all know how much media likes the ads. And then we get into, like Odeta was just saying a minute ago, the Fed has, ended up raising interest points. They're talking about potentially more raises in the interest rates. And that is really like a negative thing as far as the hot housing market goes. Why? Well, because now as they're raising the interest rates, I mean, that means mortgages are going to be much more expensive. Not a good thing for that whole housing sector altogether. Although, who knows, maybe it ends up kind of balancing out as far as trying to get the housing market to where it's more affordable again. We'll see. I mean, time will tell on that one. inflation, again, as we were just talking about a couple minutes ago, okay, this is a global market. We're in a global economy essentially right now, with so many countries that have closed down due to this pandemic. Everybody is feeling inflation. Now, the inflation levels around the world are all, they're different depending what country you're in, how big it is, how strong lockdowns were, stuff like that. But I saw this today when I was doing some research, and I was like, wow. That's a move I wish that our government would do again one day. We used to have it with the gold reserve, but we don't anymore. And for those that are listening, not watching, the title from the Washington Post article is Zimbabwe goes for the gold coin. That is to fight high inflation. And they're basically going with new 1 ounce gold coins that go on sale as the country's confidence, people's confidence in the Zimbabwe currency, it's plummeting. So they're trying to balance that out with actual literal gold 1 ounce coins to have people believe in the currency system out there as well too. Now, I started off this little news segment here with inflation being at the record high 9.1%. But I did want to show you, as far as the 10-year inflation average, and I'll pick up the 30-year one here 1 second. You could see 1.5% it was back in 2013, 0.76 in 2014, 0.73 2015, 2016 to 2019 we've had some growth, but it was still 2.29%. 2020 it was down, believe it or not. That actually surprised me when I looked at inflation in 2020, and I think that's because we still had a full supply of products, production, all that stuff going in, so that once the pandemic hit, yes, there was a lot of people that were panic shopping and all that good stuff, and things got temporarily sold out or hard to get, but we were eventually able to get it. And you had both aspects of it with supply and demand. And then in 2021, that's where it really ends up going up. Not showing, but I believe it was 8 something percent when I had looked earlier. And then you're at 2022, which in 2022, now you can remember it was 9.1% in June, but year to date, we're at 6.28%. Now there's still a lot of 2022 to go, which, that could be good. That could be bad, depending how you look at it. So that could go up, that could be lower, but halfway through the year, we're pretty close. And just to kind of give you a visual difference, last 30 years, you could see 2021 and 2022 are almost double what the previous inflation was over the last 30 years, which was 4.08% back in 2007. So a huge, drastic difference over that whole time. So let me get this off the screen here. And, I do want to say first, there is a difference between recession and inflation. That's why we separated them, okay? One is growth in prices. The other is reduction in economic output. In my opinion, again, both are due to the pandemic. 9.1% inflation in June, people are feeling it. And it's, not just families that make under 100,000, like if they make 50, 40, $60,000. I mean, there's families that live in urban cities that make $200,000 to $300,000 and that live in those more expensive areas. I mean, they're still having to make cuts and purchases. So it's a very tough time period out there, I think, for most people Again, depending on your situation, it's affecting all walks of life, savings, stock market. I mean, it's everywhere. A lot of people with their 401ks. I mean, you could be down year to date 10, 20, 30, 40% or more. And in reality, I view it that prices are just going up because we are in such short supply of goods. Ultimately, the problem comes down to printing money. And that happened during this whole COVID crisis. They just turned on the printers and just kept printing. And this goes with both administrations that have been in office during this crisis. It's not one or the other. Both have pretty much had almost the same strategy, except for one here or there. And it also has to do with wages are not staying, in par with inflation, which is making, like, for example, I went grocery shopping with my wife yesterday, and it's the first time I've done it in a minute. I'll admit I'm not a avid grocery shopper for the household. I usually just do it from an app and get it delivered to the house. But when I was looking at some of these prices, I'm like, a T-bone steak, like, this is not like Wagyu beef or something like that. And it was like 20, $22. And I'm like, holy cow, it's a piece of meat that's like 6 inches long. Like, I remember where those things were, closer to $10 or under than $20. And it kind of just really worries me that prices are going to keep going up for basic things, whether it's food, milk, eggs, gas. I mean, yes, we have had some relief at the gas pump as of late. I think maybe 20, 30 cents per gallon. It's gone down, but it's been really hard. And I don't know, unless you're super rich, like a Jeff Bezos or somebody at that level. I think for the other 99%, you have been impacted in some way, shape, or form because of this. So, Odeta, I just went over a lot of data, showing some historical data, how even people in rural America are having to go to cities for either jobs or supplies because they can't get it in there, how it's hurting the housing market. Zimbabwe coming out with gold coins because they lost confidence in their own currency because they just kept printing money, it looks like. I mean, what's your take on this type of stuff?
Yeah, so David, I think we're seeing this everywhere, right? And I'm seeing this in my own household as well in the business, right? I mean, talking about energy prices, right? And we do work with oil and gas companies, right? And you can see from there, I mean, the crude oil has gone up, right? And companies are forced to produce more gas, products that they ever have, which is more expensive for them to do, right? Therefore, you see this high increase. And, for people who have to go into the office, I mean, I understand that, we are set up, most of the companies, for remote work, but there's also companies, like you said, on farms and all this, that they need to drive. They need to use gas to get to places, right? And a lot of companies, what we're seeing here, including myself, is that they're giving, gas reimbursement, right? Or giving some extra cash, for that, to be able that this employees and people are able to come in, for example, right? And not Monday through Friday, but let's say, 2 days out of the week or 3 days out of the week where they want to be with their team and kind of be in person there, right? So the grocery part, I mean, it is crazy to talk about the formula. I mean, the prices are up in the formula or the milk. I mean, I'm a mother myself.
Oh yeah, you have an infant, so yeah.
Well, yes, and I was lucky. I was lucky enough. I nursed for a long time, and it was right where the formula I couldn't find some of the formulas, and then it kind of progressed into high prices, and you can't find anything, right? So think about all the moms out there and all this kits. I mean, what are we doing, right? Are we going back to the old age? I remember in Albania, I mean, my parents didn't have formula. For example, my sister, my parents were giving, regular cow milk. Are we going to go there? What's happening with this? So this is kind of
we should probably
crazy.
Clarify that, because you said back in Albania. For those that don't know, you are an immigrant in Albania. So, that's what Odeta is referring to. But yeah, go ahead.
Yep, taking back into memory lane, right? Are we going backwards, or what's happening here with all these prices? That was kind of my point. And also, you mentioned actually 401ks, right?
Mhm.
I want to kind of bring that up because what is your what are your thoughts on that? Should people be panicked about their 401ks and taking the money out, or should they, be leaving it where it is and investing more? What are your thoughts on that?
Again, this kind of goes back to what we were discussing during our super chat. Okay, not the super chat, but during the recession, when we were talking about the recession, it really came down to, do you have the extra money? I think if you do, again, you nor I, we're not financial advisors, but if you have the extra money, I think it could be safe to buy. I know, for example, here's my personal story. When the market crashed immediately after we went into the pandemic, what did I end up doing? I ended up buying stocks, and I was looking at ones that would drop down but had a very, very, very good chance of bouncing back relatively quickly, within a few months or something like that, a year, once we get out of the pandemic or things stabilized. And for me, it worked. I made some extra money doing it that way. So you can view it like that. I mean, if we're not at the bottom, chances are you may be getting it at a discount, but you have to watch out, because if we do go into a full blown recession, guess what? You invest into the wrong company because you think, oh, wow, they were worth $50. Their stock, because of the recession's down to $3 a share, and you buy a
Right.
couple $1,000s, they go out of business, you're squat out of luck. So you also have to do your research, be educated, and know who you're investing in. I feel with a 401k, because most people have those managed by financial firms, it kind of gives you a little bit of a safety net there. So if you're throwing it into that, I think you might be better with the higher investment now than if you were out there, just being
Later
a
on,
lone
when
wolf, investing on your own, a retail buyer yourself. But I think there's a couple different paths there that you could go. Are you investing now?
Yes and no, right? But I do
Same
think
here.
that I do think that keeping the money. I think that don't get panicked about the 401ks, right? And my recommendation on that would be just don't look at it. Don't log in and look at it right now.
Right.
Should you be buying? I truly do believe in times like this, if you do have the cash reserves and the money, yes, always be buying, because the investments that you made during these times where everything is low, eventually in the future, after everything comes out, right? Let's say we the recession, we come out of it, 2020, 24, I don't know when, right? We'll see how that happens, but you will get a lot of value added to your portfolio at that point in time in the future. So do not get
Yeah.
panicked. Don't
I
look into your
definitely.
401ks for
Mhm.
now.
Yeah. I essentially agree with that. But let's get back to the fundamental problem of inflation. Okay. And with that, it is, again, because we've been printing so much money and giving it out almost everywhere it's going out to, except for the Americans that actually need it. I mean, yeah, they got formula out to people eventually when we were essentially out of formula, but it took our government, I think, way, way, way too long to act on something that they could have done a few weeks earlier, especially because I believe I saw news reports that I believe February is when they first were alerted that there may be a formula shortage and stuff like
Yep.
that. And instead of trying to prevent it, they waited
They just
until it
let it.
escalated, and they did it after the fact instead of getting ahead of it. And that's what drives me nuts about America anymore. It seems like instead of being proactive with so many things, we're we're reactive. And until we get our budget straightened out, until we stop printing money like crazy, I don't think it's going to get fixed. I don't see any other solution.
I agree 100% with you. I think it's time to make some decisions there, and they need to be made quick because, again, you cannot be printing money. The Federal Reserve, I mean, how much can they keep, increasing the interest rates, right? To kind of cut down the expenditures and people spending and all that.
Well,
I mean, to control the
I
labor
think they're
market.
increasing the interest rate so that they can buy more money printing machines.
Good point there.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, this was great. It's something that I think's hitting people at home. Hey, we did have over 400 people watch it at one point. I would love, get those super chats out, get those super chats in. We're going to be going over all the chats at the end of this episode. Get it out now. But let's jump into our next topic, and this one's a fun one. I think you're gonna love it
especially for you and I, David, right? And everyone here that is, tech related, and it's a Twitter user, right? So we talked a little bit about, we talked about the recession, we talked about the inflation, and, the stock market and the 401ks, which I think, kind of ties also into with Elon Musk and his latest, acquisition of $44 million for Twitter, right? So I'm going to share my screen a little bit here to share, some interesting facts here. So first of all, right, who is Elon Musk? I'm sure Elon Musk, I'm sure you guys know about Elon Musk, right? If you've ever heard on Twitter, if you're on Twitter, or, newspaper, I mean, everywhere. Everyone is talking about him. He is the CEO of Tesla, the SpaceX company. He was the co-founder of the PayPal company. He's always been a big early investor, and he is the richest, guy on Earth, worth $220 billion, right? So the latest acquisition for him is Twitter, right? So a little bit of the history here with Twitter. So in April 2022, back in April, he, disclosed a 9.2% stake in Twitter, right? Then Twitter kind of replied to that, and he said, hey, by the way, Elon, why don't you get a seat on the board, right? Which he kind of accepted before declining days later, right? And then he goes about and buys Twitter for $44 billion. And then on July 8th, he kind of abandons that, right? Declaring, or I guess the reason why he said that, he's kind of coming back on that is because of the 5% of the spam accounts, right, of the overall total users. And now we have a big mess where, Twitter is suing Musk, and the trial is moved to happen in October, right? So it's very interesting. And, I always ask this question, well, why did Elon Musk decide to buy Twitter, right? So if you look at the TechCrunch article here, obviously based word per word from Elon's mouth, he says that, he bought it because of the freedom of speech and inclusivity, and this is, he wanted to promote free and open speech through Twitter, right? Some people say that he bought it because of the Babylon Bee, right, who is the biggest, company out there that got banned pretty much, from Twitter. And as some of this article says here, he literally called the CEO and said, hey, you're still banned. And then he went on and, kind of offered the $44 billion dollar offer to Twitter, right? And then he backs out, right? So why did he backs out? Well, there's a lot of questions out there, right? And one of this, thoughts or opinions is that he backs out of the Twitter deal after realizing that he can read the Babylon Bee by going directly to their website. And this came out on July, 8th, like earlier here. And is that true? What do we think about that, right, David? So David, I will take it back to you here real quick. What are your thoughts on this whole, Twitter deal history so far? And then I will kind of go a little bit down and we'll see what we do predict on this deal either happening or not happening.
Okay, so here, I've got to give a shout out. I'm a big fan of Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar. And the other week, Sagar came out with an excellent point. Okay. And I don't know, maybe I just have an innocent take on this, but I really think that he wanted to make a difference and change today's social square, as we call Twitter, the public forum of today. Even Jack Dorsey, from what I understand, was pushing Elon behind the scenes. And now that Jack's off the board and doesn't have a duty to Twitter to represent him Twitter good, he's come out now and he's actually said that, as alluding to that he was pushing towards it, that he wants Elon to buy it, to fix Twitter. So I think the challenge is twofold here. I think there's 2 points. And this circles back to what I was saying about Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar. And that's that Elon Musk, according to him, is a free speech absolutist. Okay. And I think after a couple minutes there, after he tried to buy Twitter and started maybe researching it, probably realized like, oh, wait, I can really only make free speech in the United States because in the Middle East, Europe, a bunch of Asian countries like China.
You can globally do that because they're all so different.
Globally, right. Or the business will simply be shut down and banned by the Great Firewall in China, for example. So they won't allow him to make the differences that he desires. He'd only really be able to make an impact here in the United States. Now, don't get me wrong, okay? Don't get me wrong. I think changing Twitter here in the United States would be the absolute best for us. But it will not have the global impact in those regards that I think Elon Musk was looking to try to get. So he's still bound by those tough speech restrictions of so many countries. Now, as I said earlier, it's twofold. The other point is the bots, okay? Anybody that uses Twitter knows that it is absolutely full of bots. How is it the last 3 years of Twitter's quarterly financials shows that each quarter, less than 5% bots, never has been 6%, never even 2%. Never 40%.
That's right.
They all read the same, under 5%. I mean, you have accounts with hundreds of thousands of followers, if not even millions of followers, and they tweet, and they're lucky if they get one retweet or one like. Why? They're all followed by bots. So that's my two cents on this issue. So what do you think about that? I think I just gave you a bone to chew on.
Well, yes, and here's what's interesting to me is he owns Tesla. He's the CEO of Tesla, right? And speaking about China and freedom of speech and all that, right? I mean, doesn't he think like how is that going to affect his business in China and specifically Tesla, who we have seen quite a drop, as a matter of fact, with all this craziness going on about Twitter and all of that. And it's not about Tesla, the stocks, but it's also about the Twitter stock, right? Because we have seen it is hurting Twitter bad right now, where the shares are their share price is going down, right? And this is part of the reason why they kind of asked to bring the trial earlier. They asked, I think, for September, but then they couldn't do that, and they kind of ended up on doing it in October, right? And not to mention that he's lost
it was Elon
$33 million
Musk that was
now.
trying. Yeah, it was Elon Musk that was trying to push it to October. And that's where Twitter got a kind of win, and the judge gave them their speedy trial for October.
Right. Yeah.
But you got to think, does Twitter really want this to go to trial? Do they really want the dirty laundry of, oh, yeah, by the way, we've been lying to investors since we've gone public. And we have a little bit more than 5% bots in the system. Do you buy the 5% bot thing?
No.
Is that a hard no?
Yes and no, right? I'm not. There's lots of articles out there. There's lots of facts and data, but you're absolutely right. I don't think Twitter will want to get in the nitty-gritty deep details of this, right? And as we know, Twitter is not the best social media platform out there, right? They're one at the bottom with lots and lots of issues, starting from their algorithms to, a lot more, right? From a developing perspective and on protocols and coding and all that stuff. So, there's, I don't know, big questions there. No.
I think there's a lot of questions. I think Twitter will not want this to go to full-blown trial because of the reasons I mentioned. They don't want to go underneath the covers. And from what I understand, I could be wrong, but the judge that is in this case has made a ruling before for some sort of a buyout or a merger case or something like that. And I believe the judge did order them in one case, like, hey, go work this out and buy the business, So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your prediction. Okay. You think?
Go ahead.
Do you think
the $1 million question?
Happen?
No, I don't think it's going to happen. And just because of the monetary value, right? I do think there is a big gap on the share price from when the deal first started, right? And now when the merger and the acquisition will happen, and there is a 28% decrease on that value. And I don't think that will be worth going forward with, this deal from an Elon Musk perspective.
Can't you argue that because of what Elon Musk has done with the company publicly, the buyout, criticism, bots, blah, 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 that's the reason that the price has devalued?
I mean, yes, you can look at it that way. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think he buys it. I think, and I could be totally wrong, but I do think that he ends up closing on the deal. I think potentially at a lower price. I don't know if much lower, but I would say at least, a couple of billion less. What was it? 44.2 billion, I believe.
Right.
I kind of have it in the back of my head that they'll probably land 35 to 37 billion in that range. Who knows? Maybe 34.2 billion. Bring it down 10 billion more. I mean, I don't know, but I think I think a buyout might happen.
We shall see.
Definitely, we shall.
We shall see in October, around the corner.
Yeah. So I think it's time. We have a special guest that has been waiting to come in here, listening to the whole show, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so as promised, we are having a special guest interview, and he's going to be discussing the three topics of the day that we just digested: the recession, inflation, and all the drama with Elon Musk and Twitter. So, who do we have? Mr. Scott Jennings. Scott is the Chief Revenue Officer at Centage Corp, where he is focused on driving company revenue growth and is responsible for new business and customer account management. Scott brings over 20 years experience in global technology and software organizations where he has held sales management and senior management roles. So, Scott, welcome to the show. So glad to have you on. You, my friend, you just became shark bait.
Yeah, David, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on the show, and very timely given that it's Shark Week, I think, on Discovery Channel. So
Oh, there
what
we
are the
go.
odds? What are the odds?
See, everything lines up in harmony. So the first question we ask every single guest on this show is basically, tell us about you, Scott. Well, I mean, I just read your bio, but tell us really, in a nutshell, what makes Scott Scott?
Yeah, no, good question. Tough question. Tougher than you think. But yeah, Northeast guy. Have had the benefit, like you said, of working for over 20 years in the software space, and really what I take from that is all the different organizations I've been able to work with, and you learn a lot from every single person there. So yeah, just like to take that, and I think really interesting topics today. Excited to lend some personal views to them, along with kind of the word on the street I hear in my role as CRO here at Centage. So yeah, excited to jump into it.
Hi, Scott.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Quite so not a long time, right? Glad to have you here. So we talked about recession, right? We talked about inflation, which ties in with all of this, whole recession we're in, and the government printing money and raising interest rates and trying to control, this type of recession. And then we also talked about Elon Musk and Twitter, right, which is kind of the hot topic in tech going on right now, on top of, the economy. So what are your thoughts on recession? Where do you want to start, actually? Where do you want to start? What is the...
Let's start with the topic you just covered. It's the one maybe that I know kind of the least about, but the Elon Musk and Twitter deal. I know that you and Dave each gave your point. Look, my thought on it is, for $44 billion, if he doesn't want it to happen, I just don't see it happening, right? You see a lot of deals that make a lot of sense on the surface. You see a lot of deals where both parties want it to happen and they still fall through. I think if he's adamant that he doesn't want it to happen, I just don't see how that is done. I do agree with David that if he's posturing for a better deal, maybe something happens. But I think at the end of the day, if he doesn't want to do it, maybe in October, something is ruled against him. But he's got deep pockets, and I just see it being dragged out in courts for a while, and maybe ultimately he loses interest and goes from there. So,
well, and then to your point, Scott, I mean, if this thing keeps dragging and dragging and dragging, I mean, the share price is just going to go down and down and down, right? And also think about, if he goes through with it, kind of the plan that he wants to do with Twitter, right? He wants to make it private. How is that possible? I mean, the algorithms first do not work. There's so much. He wants to, turn it into an open source, and I just can't see it how. The deal can go on, and then, okay, the deal goes on, then what is the future? Like, I can't see the future with him and Twitter, besides just having an unlimited, user data that he can control and make an impact overall in, the stock market or just kind of the economy, right? Because we've seen that one of his tweets goes out, the Twitter, whatever it is, we see a huge decrease or increase, as a matter of Tesla stock markets, right? On the stock market. So I don't know. I think we have two no's here and one yes. So I think we'll see how that goes. Any interesting points about the whole deal here? David.
Well,
hey, I'm back.
Yeah. So I think I just end with this. It's interesting that I think of Elon Musk, and I think of him with his time at PayPal, SpaceX, Boring Company, Tesla. To me, what these all have in common is these are like the first of their kind, next gen kind of future changing technologies. He's always been 5 and 10 years in the future. And Twitter to me is a little bit incongruous in that it's old school. As you mentioned, it's not a leading tech platform, and you haven't seen him execute a play where he's taken something old and made it cool again. He's always about the next big thing. And when I think of Twitter, I don't think of the next big thing. I think of the thing that was cool 10 years ago, and now there's a lot more interesting platforms out there. So I just don't see it, but I'm not Elon Musk. So
you're right. I get you, Scott. Here's a question for you in that regards. Okay, maybe he can't make Twitter cool again, but I've heard arguments that it's about the user data and things like that actually have value for Elon, and that's a potential reason why he would also be interested in Twitter.
It's possible. I mean, maybe he's seeing 1 and 1 equals 3, and he's seeing around a corner that we don't see yet.
4D chess.
Yeah, well, exactly. So who knows?
I think, who knows what his plans are in the future, right? Maybe it's related to people's consciousness. And maybe, Twitter is the most conscious public, place where people literally post whatever is on their mind. That's their consciousness. So maybe there is some other future projects that he can use all of this data to get there. I don't know. Like Scott said, he always looks at the next greatest tech big thing. And I just, again, with Twitter, I don't see how that is the next big thing, because it is at the bottom right now. It's the hot, messy potato of the internet, as they call it.
So how about this? Just to kind of throw some humor in here, should we show the picture of the shirtless Elon Musk on the beach? No, I'm kidding.
Hey,
I do not want to see that again.
I was going to say no, thank you.
So, Scott, you are, again, as we said during the introduction, you are focused on driving company revenue, company growth, all that stuff, which is cool, because myself, and I would say that it probably feels the same way. We feel like we're partners for, when I go out and I sell Vision 33 and I'm selling ERP, I'm like, hey, I'm just not here to sell you software, implement it, get you live and shake your hand like, hey, good luck, see you then. No, this is a growth partnership. We're here to help you grow, to be your trusted advisor, to get your business to the next level with different automations. So that way your people don't have to fill out spreadsheets. They're actually driving revenue, driving growth. Now, we've talked about the recession. We've talked about inflation. Being that you have that growth background, that you think kind of like Odeta and me in a lot of these areas, what kind of correlation are you seeing with company revenue growth and the current economic situation?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic for me, although maybe it seems a little dry at the outset, because, Centage is focused on a couple things that I think give a unique perspective. One is, we work with the Office of Finance, the Office of the CFO. So people that are paid to look into the future, right? That they're paid to see that. Right. Secondly, we work with SMB and mid-market. So they're, uniquely positioned where a lot of these decisions, they don't have the benefit of a lot of time. They don't have huge committees. They don't necessarily have huge volumes of data that they're able to pull in, affecting their business from international operations and things like that. They need to make quick decisions, and a wrong decision is a matter of life and death. So I think that's really interesting. And then, so from that perspective, how do you look at growth? I would look at it from two perspectives. One is certainly from our customer perspective, and then second from our own. And I think the more interesting one is the customer perspective, because when I look at this recession, what's interesting to me, and I think you used the term technical recession earlier, is, when you work with the Office of Finance, but you work across a multitude of industries, everybody's impacted a little bit differently, and everybody's impacted at a different point in time. And just a simple thing like a fiscal year, right? If you have an organization that's wrapping up their financial year at the end of December 31st, 2022, they'll have some amount of data they'll be able to use to make a decision, the recession will hit them mid-year. If you're a nonprofit or an organization that tends to have a March 31st or July 1st fiscal, we just started. So they may not see a negative impact on their overall financials for another 12 months. And so their impact on spending and things that they would see directly impact them, might be drawn out. So I think it's interesting to me. I have been, in this role back to the 2000 to 2002 recession that Odeta spoke about, as well as the 2008. And I think it's different just because a lot of it, David, you referred to it. There's a lot of pent up demand from the pandemic that has maybe just released a lot of money into the system at once, exacerbated a lot of the challenges. But I don't know that people are willing to accept that they see a recession. And I think until it smacks them in the face, they're looking at ways to grow their organizations and make decisions both personally. Odeta spoke about some of that, as well as for their organizations. And so I don't see it. Certainly everybody is looking to automate, maybe low value tasks. Everybody's prepared to do more with less. But I think it's more of a preparation than a scramble the jets, take immediate action, hiring freezes maybe.
Well, if you remember when I was speaking,
it's not global. Yeah.
If you remember when I was speaking, just to interject there in that one point, is because May, again, was the biggest tech layoff, most rescinded offers that has, I believe, ever happened. Now, you're talking tens of thousands, like 20, 30,000. I mean, that's overall, it's small to the greater economy, but still, it was significant that the tech industry has never seen that or experienced that to this level, especially with all the rescinded offers going out. I mean, every day you go through newsfeed, you can find 5 different offers, or 5 different articles. Oh, I just quit my job and was supposed to start a new job tomorrow, and they just rescinded the offer with a hiring freeze. I'm seeing that more and more frequently.
Yeah. I think that maybe is unique to the tech industry, because I think what drove a lot of the tech growth was, free or very inexpensive and really seemingly endless capital. And I think a lot of those organizations, private equity firms and VC firms, pulled back. So a lot of those organizations that were growing maybe without real prospects of revenue soon and knew that they had to take another round before they would see profitability, and then that capital is gone, maybe moved into a very much a self-preservation mode. But those same types of drivers of private equity money and VC money don't necessarily drive out into, again, a nonprofit sector or education or some sort of niche manufacturer that's got a great customer base. So I think that, again, that is maybe a canary in a coal mine, but maybe limited just to the tech space, and they'll flame out spectacularly because of some of those endless supplies of capital, but I don't think that impacts everybody, and that's necessarily the precursor to mass layoffs and things. There's still so much unemployment. I don't see how that.
Right, the unemployment rate is super high. Right, yeah.
And then I'll toss it over to Odeta, because I know she's chomping at the bit to ask some questions. But with that said, so tech industry, I get that. Maybe, so what you're saying is you think that's just, kind of more maybe isolated for that specific industry, that it's not happening across like manufacturing, distribution, or some of those other sectors in the States.
Yes, agreed. I think B2B organizations that maybe sell to tech are immediately impacted.
Right.
I think B2B organizations that have maybe a more diverse customer base with respect to size, industry, or geography, or maybe are better suited. And B2C, I think it very much depends on what niche you're in, to see the impact of that. But I think that spectacular flame out and some of those, scare stories in the media are probably limited to the tech sector in the short term.
Yeah. So Scott, what do you think about the whole, retail industry happening right now? I mean, the big dogs, Target and Walmart, like Target, for example, they own about 70% of $24 trillion, I guess, in the retail space. They're kind of projecting, and they're saying that, hey, it's going to be a recession because one, we're seeing weakening shoppers. Shoppers are not spending money anymore, right? Because of all the reasons that we just said. And two, they're seeing it very high inventory right now that they want to get rid of, but they have no leverage or they can't do anything with the pricing, right? So what are your thoughts on that as far as the retail industry goes?
I think it's a real challenge, right? And I think that while you may have your head in the sand and have some pent up desire to go out and spend freely and kind of, put the last 2.5 years aside, David, you mentioned it, the $20 steak and the $6 a gallon in gas and increased rent or increased mortgage payments. Ultimately, there's only, the pie is only so big, and those rates, everybody's not getting a 10% raise just because. So I do think that starts to force people to make some difficult decisions. And I think it probably takes time to flow through, right? I'm not an economist, but certainly from my own perspective, at some point, folks in different income levels will stop spending money, first at Target, and then it will flow through to other folks as well. But yeah, if you're spending $100 extra dollars a week in gas because you're now going back to the office, and your rent has gone up or your mortgage has gone up and everything you buy has gone up, that doesn't leave a lot to go buy a PlayStation or a new TV or as many clothes.
If you can find a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox,
find inventory,
you're right.
You can find inventory to get that
exactly.
At this point in time.
Which, talking about inventory, you brought up an interesting topic. I like that direction that you went because this was sitting on my mind that I wanted to ask as well too. I think I read the article, and I think almost every news station out there probably published the article as well too, that companies are basically giving you a refund and letting you keep the used items because it costs too much to ship them to, be resold as used in Asia or something like that. Like, how true is that? Is that legit? Like, what's going on there? That just amazes me and fascinates me because I'm like, well, should I go out and buy a new fridge and then try to return it and see if I get to keep it or what?
Yes. So I have two answers to that. So, one is, I think that the global supply chain challenges are interesting because I think that the supply chain is way more complicated than most people realize. I think it's way more complicated it was, than 30 years ago. But I think, to me, one of the big reasons in terms of why this will take a bit of time to sort itself out, and I know there's a super chat question around this, is there are a lot of companies making money because of this, and they're not necessarily inclined to make it happen any faster. Car companies are getting premiums for vehicles. Yes, they're struggling with chip shortages, but they're certainly making some money on the side. David, your specific point. I had an air conditioner. I had some window units, and one broke this morning. And I called the company, and they said, "You know what? We're not going to pay to ship it back. Keep it, and we'll just refund your money." So yes, I think I don't have an answer, but I have a real life example of situations where, due to challenges in shipping and freight and moving an item from point A to point B, then yeah, it's expensive, but I think it's cheaper for them, even for a $400 item like an air conditioner, to just say keep it, and this one's on us. And it's indicative of maybe a disposable consumption society where things are really meant to just not be passed on, and you use it, and in a few years you're on to
it's
the next
done.
That's one thing that so a lot of viewers that watch my show consistently know I lived in Mexico for 15 years, lived in Peru for nearly a year. Then I lived in California, which, is like its own place altogether anymore. But, when I was in Mexico, everything you buy is essentially, used. I mean, a lot of people, like, it was very, very, very common to just buy used items. It wasn't like frowned upon or looked down upon. I mean, it was just the way things are. And I think it's because of how their tax system is down there. There was a high, at least there used to be, I don't know, in the last 3-4 years if changes have been made, but traditionally tariffs on items from places like China would be extremely, extremely high, to where like Levi jeans, for example. Levi's, which you can buy at 22 bucks used to, at least at Walmart. You go down to a place like Tijuana or Mexico City, and you're looking at 60 to 80 bucks for the same jeans, just because of the tariffs. If they were made in the USA, they would have been covered by NAFTA at the time, which is now USMCA. But a lot of people ended up buying secondhand used, and that's just how people live down there normally. We're not as used to that, I think, in this country. I mean, yeah, maybe with a garage sale here or there, and you pick up something that you kind of wanted, but you're like, I don't want to buy one news. Oh, here's one used cheap, and you grab it. But unless it's something like guitars, which I do buy used because I'm a collector, you know, we're a society, I think, in the US that buys their things news, and we don't, buy their things brand new. We don't buy things as used as many other cultures do.
Yeah, agree. And, I did spend some time in two of the places you mentioned, Mexico and Peru. One of the things that jumped out to me just in driving around was the number of used tire shops, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
100,000 miles, those things are just getting broken in, and everything, had multiple shelf lives. And I think it just makes you appreciate, how valuable those items are. And to your point, also how expensive they could be to bring in net new from other countries where you do have, tariffs and things. And
when I lived down there, I never bought new tires. That's an excellent point. I've never bought new tires 15 plus years living, working in Mexico, because it was, why would I buy new tires when I can get all but new tires for 20 bucks,
Yeah.
And then I come up here and it's like almost impossible to find used tires, It's like everybody wants to sell the new tires.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with Albania. I grew up where we didn't buy brand new stuff most of the time. You got the secondhand stores, like you said, or pile of clothes. I remember we used to have digging through what we needed to that came from US actually. So it's interesting to see all of the, the changes that are happening with this, your AC, Scott. It's very interesting, or the fridge, right? Maybe there'll be a culture shift there a little bit.
Yeah. That's great stuff. That's why I love these conversations, because you never know where they're going. We're talking about used tires and free air conditioners. So, recession, long of the short story is, how long do you think we're going to be in this uncertainty? What's your prediction? Do you think that it will, by the end of this year, things will it'll get better? Do you think it's just supply's got to catch up to the demand, and things will start to level out? I mean, really condense it as far as what your future prediction is.
I think the uncertainty goes certainly through next year. I think it's directly impacting, again, different industries and different elements of the economy at different points. But I read an article, and one thing that was interesting is the factors that have gone into kind of where we are. One is energy prices, exacerbated by a war in Ukraine. The yield curve makes fiscal policy difficult to implement, and that only impacts kind of a narrow element of the challenges that we face with the inflation. The layoff piece is real, right? And I think we'll get a real flavor this week. I mean, I looked at the market today. It was sort of didn't do much. I think a lot of it is looking to see if some of the big earnings announcements this week already factor in, a slowing down of the economy. So I think that all those will take time to sort out. Again, the supply chain won't happen overnight. I think fiscal policy addresses a small part of it. I think supply chain issues, are long. I think, so all of these things to me mean that we'll have uncertainty, I see, through next year. I just don't see how it all resolves itself in a way that everybody feels good about the future, across all those elements: housing stocks, wages, supply chain issues, energy prices. Those are going to take time, and I see I see that going certainly in the next year. I see 18 months before we maybe see the other side.
Yeah, I mean, if you look out, it looks like at least this year, looking at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, we kind of bottomed out like middle of June. Since then, it has been going slowly
Low.
back up. Now, we're not close to the 37,000 ish that it was at the beginning of the year, but you can start to see over the last maybe 5-6 weeks that it's starting to trend a little bit more up. Some down dates, but it's slowly trending up. So that could be a positive indicator, I think. What do you think, Odeta?
Well, like Scott said, and like I said earlier, looking at some of the GDP numbers and kind of the other metrics on, sales and personal income and all of this, I do think that the recession is definitely going to hit, beginning of 2023, and I think it's going to last at about 18, I think maybe a little bit longer, 24 months, going into the 2024 year. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of, where I'm at with this whole recession thing. Looking at some of these numbers and what most of the economists say out there, and there's so many different opinions, right? But I guess we'll find out very soon, right? And one of my biggest things too is how long can the Federal Reserve keep increasing this rates and without having to disturb the economy, right? What are y'all's thought on that? I mean, how long can this keep going on?
Well, I brought it up about the housing market.
Right. So it's how long? Can we keep doing this, I guess, until it fully hits? So
I think that's the one thing that worries me is the interest rate increases and how they increase it. But then, as I mentioned, on the other hand, I mean, if it cools the hot housing market, like I don't want any market to cool down. The issue that we have with housing is, again, supply and demand. There's not enough supply for the demand, or you have major corporations that are buying up all these housing spaces to try to flip them. And it's really making housing prices unattainable. I mean, we had to move just in April. 3.5 years living in the same house, never any issues. What happened? Well, the owner decided that instead of selling the house to us in 2025, 2026, when the plan was that he would reap his ROI, with this market, he can get the ROI now. So go get a house. You had the June to get it. And here I am, we had to downsize and move because there's not many houses that are available for 5 people. So it's personally hit us pretty hard.
Yeah, because there's a high demand and there's not enough houses really out there, especially with the high growing numbers of millennials looking to, rent and move into the city and all of that stuff. And I look at what's happening in Austin, right? I mean, it's crazy. People are just moving out. Taxes are going up. I mean, it's not affordable. And I mean, you can't, a brand new first buyer, home buyer cannot even get a house, literally.
No.
So it's becoming a little bit rough.
Yeah, definitely. So we have one super chat here. I promised that we would go through some of the super chats. First off, I want to give a shout out to Champ Gaming. He had said featuring Odeta Pine. That's amazing. Champ is someone who watches a lot of our episodes. So thank you, Champ, for tuning in. Thanks for your comment. I'm sure Odeta really appreciated that. Courtney Cobb, y'all are doing great. Pumpkin Squad, who is my daughter, but she said hi. So my daughter said hi to us all. So we have a super chat from Raquel saying, do you think with all the supply chain issues that things will get worse before they get better in regards to inflation? I know that you kind of touched on this a little bit, Scott, but do you want to give another quick answer?
I think it gets worse. I think that there's right now there's money to be made from the way the supply chain works out for the status quo, and until organizations either change their manufacturing locations or look to come up with kind of a new way to bring goods to market. I think organizations will slow roll it and get every reap what the current situation affords them before they're kind of forced to revert back to the way things used to be. And it will take time to bring new goods to market, through alternate supply chains. So I see it getting worse.
Right. Understood.
Especially with everything that's happening globally, I think it's definitely going to get worse before it gets any better, for sure, until certain decisions are made.
I agree with both of your takes. I think it definitely ends up getting worse before it gets better. Again, I think there are some companies that are taking advantage of it, but I also think that there's some that really aren't. It's just like, hey, our prices have gone up. We've had to pay more for, the CPI increase and cost of living increases to employees, and therefore we have to charge more. It's not that they're trying to really take advantage of customers. It's more they're trying to maintain their existing profit margins as much as they can, because otherwise they can't grow, they can't expand, they can't do the endeavors that they were looking to do pre-pandemic or pre-recession, pre-inflation, all of that stuff. Then we just had one last comment down here from Letty Portocarrero saying interesting. So I think that's a wrap as far as the super chats go for today. Oh, I did miss one right here from Relaxing Sounds saying she has so much knowledge. Hats off. I assume that's for you, Odeta.
Thank you, I guess. I'm trying my best. I don't know it all, but I'm trying my best. I'm learning every day, but especially from you guys as well, who are the experts.
Yep. Oh, thank you. Scott, thank you so much for coming on. This has been amazing. Can you please tell us, how can people digitally, now notice I'm saying digitally, okay? How can people digitally stalk you? Where can they find out more info about you, more info about your company?
I think LinkedIn is the best way. Yeah, not Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah.
No Twitter until we make a decision, until we see what's going to happen. Just kidding.
Right.
That best thing is to connect via LinkedIn and chat that way. That's the best way to do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for coming on. Really grateful that you came on, that you joined us on our first ever Shark Bite Biz Live. And I got to get you on at some point to do a full episode.
I'm honored. Yeah, I'll come back anytime. Thanks, David. Thanks, Odeta.
Perfect.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Cheers.
Bye.
Well, I've got to close out the episode here real quick. So went through the shoot. So basically, that is a wrap. We hope that you enjoyed this special edition of Shark Bite Biz Live. We did top out at about 477 concurrent viewers. So that was really, really awesome. Thank you, every single person out there who joined the show. Please let us know in the comments. Did you like the show? Did you like the format? This is a pilot of something that they have been pretty much workshopping for the last 3 or 4 months. So we just figured, hey, let's do it. Let's pilot it. Let's see if this actual live stream works. This is the recipe that we came up with. Would love to get your feedback. And again, a special shout out to the sponsors of the show, both G7 Tech Services. Please tell us, where can people find your company at?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, as Scott said, is the best way to get in touch with me, as well as check out our website, www.g7techservices.com. And please, either chat with us or reach out. My email is odeta@g7techservices.com for any inquiries that you might have. And, any questions on how do you take your company and your business to the next level using the most innovative and well set up technology out there.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, David. It was so much fun to do this together, and I am looking forward to the next kind of episode to see what we can do there.
Yeah. We're definitely going to keep this moving on. And again, shout out to Vision 33 again for helping make this possible as well. Vision33.com. All those small businesses out there that need an ERP. If you make or move the product, we have SAP, Business One, Business by Design, or if you just need a financial service, we have our Sage Intact Business Line. Either way, we have the technology to help you automate all your business processes, as well as one last shout out to deadhousecoffee.com. Remember, use code 25 now, and you'll get 25% off your purchase of fresh roasted coffee this week only. Okay, I'll see you all next week with our regularly scheduled podcast episode. And you all already know this by now because the names are on the screen. But I'm David Strausser. She's Odeta.
And I'm Odeta.
And you just watched Shark Bite Biz live. See you next week with our normal episode. Cheers.
Bye, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for listening to Shark Bite Biz. We hope you got some insightful info from this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us through your favorite podcast app and visit us on the web at www.sharkbitebiz.com. How has business changed for you in the 20s? Email us at podcast@sharkbitebiz.com so you can join us and share your story.